A good evening to you all, and thank you very much for joining us here on Rwanda Television News tonight. We hope you had yourselves a very productive Tuesday. Now here's a sneak peek at our edition tonight. Today, the Prime Minister of Rwanda, Dr. Edouard Ngirente, received a delegation from Lesotho, headed by the Deputy Prime Minister of Lesotho, Ntomeng Majara, and they talked about how both countries may continue to strengthen their existing relationship. The government of Rwanda has adopted a 5-year fintech strategy for Rwanda to support the development of the fintech ecosystem in the country to maximize the potential that fintechs hold for economic growth. We are glad to have your company tonight, coming to you straight from the heart of Africa, Kigali, and our bringing you the news is Martina Abera. Let us start off by informing you that today the Prime Minister of Rwanda, Dr. Edouard Ngirente, received a delegation from Lesotho headed by the Deputy Prime Minister of Lesotho, Ntomeng Majara, and they talked about how both countries may continue to strengthen their existing relationship. This delegation is also here to learn from Rwanda about different programs to the country's development. Lesotho's Deputy Prime Minister also told our colleague Eme Bote Mushashi that her delegation is the second cohort to come to Rwanda, and the first having visited a few months ago on a similar mission.
The main objective of our visit, the delegation from Lesotho, is actually it's a study tour. We have come here to learn about many programs that Rwanda has in place. It is renowned for its good governance strategies, accountability, performance management, what's the name of that national, the one that you do every last Saturday, the Umuganda, the Irembo. There is so much for us to learn. We are a new government. We were elected, well, new relatively, because the current Prime Minister was never a politician before. He comes from the business community. So he just cobbled up some of the business people and people from the civil service professionals to found a new party, because Lesotho felt that it was time we had something different from the old recycled politicians. So we came into office ill-prepared. We had just founded the party in March, and then in October we found ourselves in government. No preparation, we hadn't learned anything about running a government. But because we already had good relations with Rwanda, he felt that it would be very beneficial for us to come here and learn a lot. Rwanda is a shining beacon, not just in Africa, but globally, for its good programs, especially judging from its sad past. But you have done so well. So basically, it is just a study program for my delegation. We are actually the second cohort to come. A few months ago, another delegation of government ministers came on the same mission. I like greenery. It's leafy, it's green, it's beautiful. And the people here are very friendly. We were received very warmly. So I like that about Rwanda. And the food is nice, of course. So, yes.
The government of Rwanda has adopted a 5-year fintech strategy for Rwanda to support the development of the fintech ecosystem in the country so as to maximize the potential that fintechs hold for economic growth. The story is coming from Saula Sandra Tumukunde.
Arnold Kwizera, the founder of Alka Ventures Studio and the Director General of ICT Chamber Alex Nale, both said how these strategies was really needed and how they are going to help them in their activities.
Having a fintech strategy gives investors a lot of confidence to not only come and domicile there may be venture funds towards fintechs in this country, but to also show the forward thinking of the country. Now, the fintech strategy has been benchmarked on a few countries globally that have excelled when it comes to the fintechs. When you look at countries like Chile, countries like Lithuania, countries like Kenya, South Africa, to mention but a few. But Rwanda coming out and taking this leapfrog and setting up the fintech strategy also shows that the purpose of technology in uplifting Africans, especially serving the underserved Africans. Now, what does this do? This is going to entice entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs that are making the fintech solutions on the continent, to use Rwanda as a testing hub, a launch pad to come out and start their fintech solutions in the country, which in the long run is going to attract capital, but also incentivize the best of the best to come and use this growing population that has a lot of internet access.
When things are very clear, it creates attraction, or it attracts investment. And because now there is that clarity has been made, so what we are expecting is that, one, investments will come in, and when those investments come in, whether to build new products or to support existing ones on scalability, for the citizen, okay, who previously was struggling maybe with a very limited menu of products that they can access. Now that menu is going to be expanded because the investor has clarity on where he is allowed to play, where he can add value, and the entrepreneur also has clarity on how he can play and participate in the broader scheme of things. So there is a win-win-win-win.
Fintech strategies will also boost Rwanda's investment and financial sectors by enhancing accessibility to investors. Leila Rwagasana is the fintech leader at Rwanda Finance Limited. She shows how these strategies will operate in financial sectors.
Yes, I would say it was a concern in having a policy, a guideline in terms of regulation, in terms of building different ecosystems that enables fintechs. But it also comes as an addition to support even the local fintechs or local startups that are looking at emerging in fintechs, in having a clear guideline in terms of regulation, in terms of testing their ideas locally, but also supporting them in accessing investments or accessing capital. And that's where KFC plays a huge role, because our mandate is to attract investments. And with the support of the strategy, it's going to help us even to attract investors that strictly focus on fintechs, supporting the local fintechs to scale, those ones that are started in Rwanda, but also scale on the continent as well.
Fintech to deliver greater financial inclusion, to enhance the strength and inclusivity of the financial system as a whole, and to drive more significant economic growth in market worldwide. Esther Kunda, Director General of Innovation and Emerging Technologies, said that these strategies will help Rwanda to achieve the 2050 vision.
As always, and I think if you look at most of our technology and innovation policies, we want Rwanda to be a launchpad for Pan-African solutions, and this is what the fintech strategy also aims to do in terms of a launchpad for Pan-African fintech companies, but also building a thriving ecosystem here in Rwanda. Essentially, in 5 years where we see ourselves, we want to be able to have as many fintech companies as possible, and diversified fintech companies, because today when you look at fintech companies, you only see payment related companies. So we want to diversify the sector. It's a very big sector, and we want to see diversification. We also want to see citizens the same way they've really we've seen growth in terms of adoption of digital payments or mobile money transaction. We also want to see adoption of fintech products, and then we want to see investment being attracted towards those companies that we are going to be supporting and creating an environment for. And our hope is that towards all that continues to increase our the digital financial inclusion for our citizens.
The FinTech Association will collaborate closely with government, bodies and regulators to advocate for policies and provide a supportive environment for FinTech growth. Saula Sandra Tumkund, RwandaTV News.
Thank you, Saula Sandra, for that report. The International Monetary Fund has visited Rwanda to discuss policies, priorities and progress on reforms as part of the fourth review of the country's policy coordination instrument, Resilience Sustainability Facility, and the second review of the Standby Credit Facility arrangement. The team leader of the IMF team that visited Rwanda for 2 weeks, Mr. Ruben Atoyan, emphasized the government's strong commitment to implementing climate-related reforms under the RSF arrangement, with measures for climate budget tagging, improving the climate resilience of public investments, adopting sustainability disclosure standards, and developing a green taxonomy on track for completion in the coming weeks. In his statement released at the end of the mission, he revealed that Rwanda's GDP is projected to grow by 8.3% by the end of this year and even go beyond. This growth will be supported by strong performances in the services and construction sectors, along with a recovery in food crop production. He also highlighted that the 6.6% depreciation of the Rwandan franc against the US dollar was a necessary measure for facilitating essential external adjustments, while international reserves stood at 4.5 months of prospective imports by mid-2024, providing a buffer against external shocks. According to the review made by the IMF Executive Board in mid-December, Rwanda is set to receive $95.9 million under the RSF and $89.0 million under SCF. Moving on, experts from across Africa are reflecting on the One Africa Network initiative, a program aimed at lowering the cost of international communications within the continent. This initiative is one of Smart Africa's strategies for enhancing continental integration and economic cooperation. At a workshop in Kigali, delegates including experts from Gabon and Rwanda discussed the progress and challenges since the initiative was first introduced in 2016. Ralph Oyini Mbuna, Director of Digital Transformation at Smart Africa, highlighted efforts to create a unified regulatory framework and pricing models to ensure the program's success despite ongoing hurdles in its implementation.
That is, the One Africa Network is trying to make sure that every citizens and every businesses on the continent can talk to each other at lower cost. So it's the One Africa Network. It actually has like two objectives. The first objective, as I said, is to reduce the roaming cost and communication, the international communication within Africa. And the second objective is to keep the African traffic in Africa. And what we mean by African traffic is when like a citizen from a country A in Africa is calling another citizen in country B in Africa. That traffic has no business going outside of the continent and coming back. It should remain on the continent and be available at affordable rate to African citizens. And if you see, I would not say that the initiative is not yet implemented. It's being implemented, it's ongoing. It's not fully implemented, but when you look at West Africa, recently, for example, we had some agreements between some West African countries, I believe it was Benin, Togo, Ghana, where they decided to lower the cost of the roaming charges and international communication between those countries. So it is happening as we're talking. What we're trying to do now is that we're trying to accelerate this implementation. Well, the challenges, you have many. You have several challenges. I would cite three main challenges. The first challenge that we're trying to solve with this workshop, for example, is regulation. What's happening is like you have different regulation in different countries in Africa. Remember, we're 54, 55 countries, very diverse continent. We're the continent with the most amount of countries, right? So we need to find a way to harmonize all those different regulations so that then those costs can be also harmonized. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is infrastructure. The reason why it's been easier for operators to bring a traffic outside of the continent is because of the lack of what we call direct connections between countries in Africa. Direct connections. And those infrastructure sit as highways, just like you have roads. The third and last challenge that I want to point out is the enforcement. You see, let me tell you something. When you look to Europe, right, they have like strong continental bodies that can enforce regulations at a continental level. In Africa, it's not the case. We have to proceed differently. It's not a bad thing, but it takes more time. We have to move with countries that are willing to take this risk. Well, this workshop, I'm really impressed by this workshop, first of all. I assisted to many free roaming workshops across the continent, but this workshop is particular because like the outcomes of this workshop are very practical. Two outcomes of this workshop is one, regulation framework that will guide our member states within Smart Africa to harmonize their regulations and lower the costs, right? And keep the traffic within Africa. That's number one. Number two, we also came out with pricing models. Pricing models that we can then propose to the different actors responsible for roaming and international calls so that they can level down the pricing progressively. Those practical outcomes of this workshop, the next step is for Smart Africa. Remember, Smart Africa is an alliance of 40 governments with heads of state at the board, and we also have like the Council of African Regulators, is for Smart Africa in collaboration with the champion country of this initiative, which is the Republic of Gabon, to now go to the different member states, the different regions, even go to the operators and collaborate. It's all about collaboration and partnership at this level so that, remember, we go with countries, we go with actors that are willing to make a change, to go to those actors and reduce those costs down progressively and adapt the regulation of those different countries at the same time.
Moving on to the transport sector, soon no public transport driver in Rwanda will be able to carry out his activities in the absence of a professional certificate issued by a competent authority. These authorities are the Association of Public Transporters in Rwanda, ATPR, and the RwandaTV board. Prince Manzi with more.
In Remera bus park, passengers accuse drivers of bad behaviors. Some have no uniform, they drive badly, simply they lack professionalism. Some even steal passengers. These cases and others prompted the introduction of the training school for public transporters. The ministerial order determines that a driver who wishes to carry out public transport must hold a professional certificate issued to that effect. This is relevant to both land and water transport services, as explained by Theoneste Munguzi, the president of the Association of Public Transporters in Rwanda. The certificate is determined by the law, and as ATPR, it is our responsibility to professionalize our drivers. Kicking off, the training center started with 120 public transporters, and they affirmed that the training will be impactful. We will be trained also in languages. We will be able to communicate with passengers speaking all languages. There are electric buses introduced in the country, and with the skills to be given, they will help in developing my career. Aimable Gwamisirabo of the RwandaTV board affirms that in such time it is critical to build a professionalized public transport sector. Drivers already have skills but lack morals, some of them. They meet various individuals and in all levels, so this center will help them in how they comport. Analyzing this 2023 ministerial order, it clarifies that the usual driving license is not enough to carry out public transportation in Rwanda.
Volkswagen Mobility Solutions Rwanda, in collaboration with the Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture, RICA, earlier today launched the Gen Farm project, an initiative designed to transform Rwandan agriculture by introducing electric tractors into rural farming communities. Martina Bien, the managing director of Volkswagen Africa, highlighted that this initiative holds the future of Africa's agricultural sector, as well as officiating the operations of e-mobility on the continent.
The visitors of the exhibition to understand the radical transformation taking place outside urban areas and requiring new responses. Thomas' conviction was, and is still, that mobility is a social right, as it provides access to different economic and political realities, regardless of where you were born or where you live. As Volkswagen, we believe in the democratization of mobility for all. This has been our mission and cornerstone of our African dream, to be leading provider of sustainable mobility across Africa. The Volkswagen brand is expanding across the continent to grow its footprint and provide mobility for all. We are working with the Association of African Automotive Manufacturers, which recently has been mentioned. The AAAM and the CEO of AAAM is also in the room, Dave Coffey, and with the assistance of the VDA, the German Association of Manufacturers, to industrialize the continent with the development of a thriving automotive industry.
Dr. Ron Rosati, the Vice Chancellor of Rwanda Institution for Conservation Agriculture, affirmed that with a focus on conservation agriculture to promote sustainable farming practices through e-mobility resources.
We want to see the cost of food decline, we want to see profitability increase, and we want our farming practices to be sustainable. So one piece of technology that we're looking at to do that is the electric tractor, the e-tractor. And today we had a prototype delivered that will allow us to test the efficiency and the practicality of using an e-tractor for farming in Rwanda. We've had a prototype on campus for a couple of years that showed us that it's promising technology. This new tractor will allow us to implement some higher grade of technology and to verify the technology even more. So some of the advantages to the e-tractor are that we're producing the fuel in country. RICA is entirely off-grid. We produce all of our electricity with photovoltaic cells, with solar cells. So these e-tractors essentially are powered with fuel that we generate on campus. So the fuel is renewable, it's local, and it has zero carbon emissions. So in terms of long-term sustainability, it has all the right characteristics.
And on behalf of the news production team as well as the technical team, would like to thank you very much for sticking with us on RTV News. Who brought to you the news is Martina Abera, and would like to wish you to have a great night.